Welcome to Daily English Stories. Every story hides a world. Some inspire, some haunt, some stay forever. Chapter 1. A New Life on Her Own. Aisha Khan was 25 when she first turned the key to her very own apartment in Toronto. It wasn't large, but it had a warmth about it, the kind of space where the soft afternoon light spilled through the curtains, casting golden patterns on the wooden floor. The walls were painted a gentle cream, and the faint scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air. It was hers, every corner, every shelf, every quiet moment. Her mornings began before the city had fully awakened. At 6:30 a.m., her alarm would play her favorite song, a melody that seemed to stretch into the corners of her sleepy mind, gently pulling her into the day. She would push the blanket aside, stretch her arms toward the ceiling, and take a deep breath as if to remind herself, "This is my life now." The bathroom mirror reflected a face still soft with sleep. Aisha's skincare routine was simple but full of care. The cool touch of a gentle cleanser, the refreshing sweep of toner, the comforting layer of moisturizer, and finally, sunscreen, even on days when the sky stayed cloudy. She didn't rush. Each step felt like a small act of kindness toward herself. In the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee mingled with the sound of the toaster. Avocado toast, scrambled eggs, and a sprinkle of herbs on top. A breakfast that wasn't just food, but a quiet ritual. Sometimes she read a book while eating. Other days, she let a podcast fill the silence with voices and stories. In those moments, the world outside could wait. By mid-morning, she was dressed for work. Aisha worked as a graphic designer at a small but creative firm tucked into one of Toronto's bustling neighborhoods. Her job wasn't just about colors and layouts. It was about telling stories through design, about capturing ideas and turning them into something people could see and feel. She loved that. She loved the way her creativity found purpose in every project. After work, there was often Sarah, her best friend, and constant source of laughter. They would meet for coffee in a cafe with big windows and steaming mugs, swapping stories about their day. Sarah was a software engineer, and somehow their worlds, one full of lines of code, the other of lines and shapes, blended into conversations that never seemed to end. Evenings were quiet, but never empty. Aisha found comfort in cooking, experimenting with flavors, filling her apartment with the smell of biryani, pasta, or sometimes something entirely new. On certain nights, she would slip into her workout clothes and head to the gym, her playlist keeping pace with her movements, a mix of cardio, weights, and yoga. Other nights, she would roll out her mat at home, close her eyes, and let meditation guide her into stillness. And yet, amid this carefully balanced life, there was something, or rather, someone, who lingered at the edge of her thoughts. Alex, her neighbor, tall, kind-eyed, and with a smile that seemed to make the hallway a little brighter. They had crossed paths more than once, in the elevator, in the gym, or just outside their doors. Their conversations were brief, but enough to leave Aisha wondering what it would be like to know him beyond these passing moments. Living alone had given her freedom, self-reliance, and a space entirely her own. But it had also brought the quiet, the kind of quiet that made her hear her own thoughts more clearly. Some of them were dreams, some were doubts, and some were about Alex. Chapter 2. Challenges, growth, and dreams. Life has a way of testing the very limits of your strength, often when you least expect it. For Aisha, that moment came on a quiet Tuesday morning, when an email from her company landed in her inbox. The words were polite, even sympathetic, but their meaning was sharp and heavy. Her position as a graphic designer had been terminated. She sat frozen in her small kitchen, the steam from her morning tea curling into the air, her spoon resting mid-stir. For a moment, the world outside her window, the slow-moving street, the distant hum of traffic, felt far away, like she was watching it from behind a pane of thick glass. The first few days were a haze of uncertainty. She updated her resume, sent out applications, and forced herself to keep a routine. Yet, with each passing hour, she could feel a subtle shift happening inside her. Instead of giving in to despair, she decided to lean into the time she suddenly had. She began sketching again, not for a client, but for herself, letting her pen wander into shapes and colors that carried pieces of her soul. She started a small blog, sharing snippets of her art, alongside thoughts about creativity, resilience, and the quiet magic hidden in ordinary days. Volunteering at a local community center brought her face-to-face with people from every walk of life. Teaching children the basics of digital design lit a fire in her that her old job had slowly dimmed. She signed up for online courses, photography, creative writing, even cooking, each lesson a small step toward a richer version of herself. Her weekends became sacred adventures. Some days she wandered through Toronto's bustling markets, tasting exotic spices and watching street performers under strings of golden fairy lights. Other times, she found herself lost in the hushed corridors of art museums, staring at paintings until the outside world disappeared. When she craved peace, she'd escape to the city's quiet nature trails, where the sound of leaves crunching under her boots reminded her that life's beauty often lies in its simplest moments. Financially, she learned to be clever and careful, budgeting every dollar, finding joy in cooking meals at home, and transforming her apartment with thrift store treasures. She created a dream jar where she tucked away small amounts of money, each note representing a future trip: Paris in the spring, Kyoto in the fall, Santorini in the summer. Through the highs and lows, she realized that solitude wasn't loneliness. It was a vast, open space where creativity bloomed and self-discovery flourished. She built a circle of people who lifted her higher: Sarah, her unwavering best friend; the elderly couple from the corner cafe who always remembered her order; and a few kind strangers who would eventually become dear friends. With every challenge faced, every skill learned, and every dream added to her list, Aisha began to see herself differently, not as someone surviving, but as someone slowly, beautifully, and confidently creating the life she had always imagined. Chapter 3: Love, Change, and the Road Ahead. The shift was subtle at first. A little more time spent by the apartment window in the evenings, a few extra minutes adjusting her hair before heading out, and a smile that lingered longer than it used to. Aisha had grown closer to Alex in a way that felt natural, like the slow blooming of spring after a long winter. Their conversations began with small talk in the hallway, but soon spilled into late-night chats over coffee, laughter echoing through her apartment as if they had known each other for years. Life began to take on richer colors. There were milestones to celebrate: a major design project completed ahead of schedule, her first photography print displayed at a small local exhibition, and her parents' wedding anniversary, which reminded her, once again, of the quiet, enduring love that had shaped her idea of commitment. That evening, sitting across from her parents at the dinner table, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had weathered storms together, and yet here they were, still laughing over silly inside jokes. She thought of how rare and precious that kind of bond was. One crisp Saturday morning, she decided to change her look. Not because she was unhappy with herself, but because she felt ready to reflect the transformation she had been experiencing inside. The hair salon smelled faintly of lavender and fresh coffee. As the stylist's scissors snipped away, strands of her old self fell to the floor. She looked into the mirror and saw a woman who was confident, radiant, and unafraid to start again. Soon after, she adopted a small rescue cat she named Luna, a shy, gray-furred companion with curious green eyes. Luna followed her from room to room, curling up beside her while she worked, purring softly in the quiet of the evenings. It was the kind of companionship that warmed her heart without demanding too much of her energy. Her weekends now held more outdoor adventures, whether it was hiking in the nearby trails, picnicking under the cherry blossoms in High Park, or taking long evening walks along the waterfront with Alex. Each outing felt like another thread in the tapestry of a life she was weaving with care. There were challenges at work, a demanding client here, a tight deadline there, but Aisha no longer saw them as roadblocks. Instead, they became opportunities to test her patience, sharpen her skills, and prove to herself that she could rise to the occasion.